Petra. Romanized, Albatra, originally known to its inhabitants as Rakamu or Rakemo, is a historic and archaeological city in southern Jordan. It is adjacent to the mountain of Jabal al-Madba, in a basin surrounded by mountains forming the eastern flank of the Araba Valley running from the Dead Sea to the Gulf of Aqaba. The area around Petra has been inhabited from as early as 7000 BC, and the Nabateans might have settled in what would become the capital city of their kingdom as early as the 4th century BC. Archaeological work has only discovered evidence of Nabatean presence dating back to the 2nd century BC, 8, by which time Petra had become their capital. The Nabateans were nomadic Arabs who invested in Petra's proximity to the incense trade routes by establishing it as a major regional trading hub. The trading business gained the Nabateans considerable revenue and Petra became the focus of their wealth. The Nabateans were accustomed to living in the barren deserts, unlike their enemies, and were able to repel attacks by taking advantage of the area's mountainous terrain. They were particularly skillful in harvesting rainwater, agriculture and stone carving. Petra flourished in the 1st century AD, when its famous Al-Qatsneh structure, believed to be the mausoleum of Nabatean King Aretas IV, was constructed, and its population peaked at an estimated 20,000 inhabitants. Although the Nabatean kingdom became a client state of the Roman Empire in the 1st century BC, it was only in 106 AD that it lost its independence. Petra fell to the Romans, who annexed Nabatea and renamed it as Arabia Petrea. Petra's importance declined as sea trade routes emerged, and after an earthquake in 363 destroyed many structures. In the Byzantine era several Christian churches were built, but the city continued to decline, and by the early Islamic era it was abandoned except for a handful of nomads. It remained unknown until it was rediscovered in 1812 by Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. It has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1985. UNESCO has described Petra as one of the most precious cultural properties of man's cultural heritage. In 2007, Al-Qatsneh was voted one of the new 7 wonders of the world. Petra is a symbol of Jordan, as well as Jordan's most visited tourist attraction. Tourist numbers peaked at 1.1 million in 2019, marking the first time that the figure rose above the 1 million mark. Tourism in the city was crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic, but soon after started to pick up again, reaching 260,000 visitors in 2021. Pliny the Elder and other writers identify Petra as the capital of the Nabatean kingdom and the center of their caravan trade. Enclosed by towering rocks and watered by a perennial stream, Petra not only possessed the advantages of a fortress, but controlled the main commercial routes which passed through it to Gaza in the west, to Basra and Damascus in the north, to Aqaba and Luscum on the Red Sea, and across the desert to the Persian Gulf. Excavations have demonstrated that it was the ability of the Nabateans to control the water supply that led to the rise of the desert city, creating an artificial oasis. The area is visited by flash floods, but archaeological evidence shows that the Nabateans controlled these floods by the use of dams, cisterns, and water conduits. These innovations stored water for prolonged periods of drought and enabled the city to prosper from its sale. In ancient times, Petra might have been approached from the south on a track leading across the plain of Petra, around Jabal Haroun, Aaron's mountain, the location of the tomb of Aaron, said to be the burial place of Aaron, brother of Moses. Another approach was possibly from the high plateau to the north. Today, most modern visitors approach the site from the east. The impressive eastern entrance leads steeply down through a dark, narrow gorge, in places only 3 to 4 meters, 10 to 13 feet, wide, called the Sikh shaft, a natural geological feature formed from a deep split in the sandstone rocks and serving as a waterway flowing into Wadi Musa. One of the main things that Petra is known for is its Hellenistic architecture. The facades of the tombs in Petra display this type of architecture, and it also grants reflection on the different types of cultures that the Nabateans traded with. Most of these contain small burials and niches that are carved into the stone. Perhaps a more prominent resemblance to the Hellenistic style comes with its treasury, which is 24 meters, 79 feet, wide and 37 meters, 121 feet, tall, and gives reference to the architecture of Alexandria. The facade of the treasury features a broken pediment with a central thyllos inside, and 2 obelisks appear to form into the rock at the top. Near the bottom of the treasury there are twin Greek gods Castor and Pollux, who protect travelers on their journeys. Near the top of the treasury, 2 Victories are seen standing on each side of a female figure on the thyllos. This female figure is believed to be the Isis Tyche, Isis being the Egyptian goddess and Tyche being the Greek goddess of good fortune. Another prime example of the Hellenistic architecture featured in Petra is in its monastery, which stands at 45 meters, 148 feet, tall and 50 meters, 160 feet, wide. This is Petra's largest monument and is another building carved into the rocks of Petra. The facade of this again features a broken pediment, similar to the treasury, as well as another central thyllos. The monastery displays more Nabatean touch while at the same time incorporating elements from Greek architecture. Its only source of light is its entrance, standing at 8 meters, 26 feet, high. There is a large space outside of the monastery, which is purposefully flattened for worship purposes. Formerly, in the Byzantine period, this was a place for Christian worship, but is now a holy site for pilgrims to visit. At the end of the narrow gorge, the Sikh, stands Petra's most elaborate ruin, popularly known as Aukotsne, the treasury, hewn into the sandstone cliff. While remaining in remarkably preserved condition, the face of the structure is marked by hundreds of bullet holes made by the local Bedouin tribes that hoped to dislodge riches that were once rumored to be hidden within it. A little farther from the treasury, at the foot of the mountain called Denneh, is a massive theater, positioned so as to bring the greatest number of tombs within view. At the point where the valley opens out into the plain, the site of the city is revealed with striking effect. The theater was cut into the hillside and into several of the tombs during its construction. Rectangular gaps in the seating are still visible. Almost enclosing it on 3 sides are rose-colored mountain walls, divided into groups by deep fissures and lined with knobs cut from the rock in the form of towers. The theater was said to hold around 8,500 people. The performances that audiences were able to attend here were poetry readings and dramas. Gladiator fights were also said to be held here and attracted the most audience. Although no gladiator was able to gain any momentum or fame due to the heavy mortality rate that came with it, the theater was one of many structures in Petra that took significant damage due to the 363 Galilee earthquake. The Petra Pool and Garden Complex is a series of structures within the city center, originally said to be a market area. Excavations at the site have allowed scholars to identify it as an elaborate Nabatean garden, which included a large swimming pool, an island pavilion, and an intricate hydraulic system. Ahead of the Petra Pool and Garden Complex lies Colonnaded Street, which is among few artifacts of Petra that was constructed rather than natural. This street used to hold a semicircle nymphaeum, which is now in ruins due to flash flooding, and used to hold Petra's only tree. This was intended to be a symbol for the peaceful atmosphere that the Nabateans were able to construct in Petra. Once the Romans took control of the city, Colonnaded Street was narrowed to make room for a sidewalk, and 72 columns were added to each side. The high place of sacrifice is located at the top of Jebel Madba mountain. The beginning of the hike is near Petra's famous theater. From there, the site of the high place of sacrifice is around an 800-step hike. One commonly believed sacrifice that took place there was libation. Another common form of sacrifice that took place there was animal sacrifice. This is due to the belief that the tomb of the prophet Aaron is located in Petra, which is a sacred site for Muslims. In honor of this, a goat was sacrificed annually. Other rituals also took place there, including the smoking of frankincense. The royal tombs of Petra embody the unique artistry of the Nabateans while also giving display to Hellenistic architecture, but the facades of these tombs have worn due to natural decay. One of these tombs, the palace tomb, is speculated to be the tomb for the kings of Petra. The Corinthian tomb, which is right next to the palace tomb, has the same Hellenistic architecture featured on the treasury. The two other royal tombs are the Silk Tomb and the Urn Tomb. The Silk Tomb does not stand out as much as the Urn Tomb. The Urn Tomb features a large yard in its front, and was turned into a church after the expansion of Christianity in 446 AD. In 2016, archaeologists using satellite imagery and drones discovered a very large, previously unknown monumental structure whose beginnings were tentatively dated to about 150 BC. The time when the Nabateans initiated their public building program. It is located outside the main area of the city, at the foot of Jabal an-Mer and about half a mile, 0.8 kilometers, south of the city center, but is facing east, not towards the city, and has no visible relationship to it. The structure consists of a huge, 184 by 161 feet, 56 by 49 meters, platform, with a monumental staircase along its eastern side. The large platform enclosed a slightly smaller one, topped with a comparatively small building, 28 by 28 feet, 8.5 by 8.5 meters, which was facing east toward the staircase. The structure, second in size only to the monastery complex, probably had a ceremonial function of which not even a speculative explanation has yet been offered by the researchers. The Iron Age lasted between 1200 and 600 BC. In that time, the Petra area was occupied by the Edomites. The configuration of mountains in Petra allowed for a reservoir of water for the Edomites. This made Petra a stopping ground for merchants, making it an outstanding area for trade. Things that were traded here included wines, olive oil and wood. Initially, the Edomites were accompanied by nomads who eventually left. But the Edomites stayed and made their mark on Petra before the emergence of the Nabateans. They were then engaged in battle with King Amaziah of Judah and chased back into their own lands. It is said that 10,000 men were thrown off of the mountain Amal-Biyara. This story has been debated by scholars, as it is in so-called biblical times. The Edomite site excavated at the top of the Amal-Biyara mountain at Petra was established no earlier than the 7th century BC. The Nabateans were one among several nomadic Bedouin tribes that roamed the Arabian desert and moved with their herds to wherever they could find pasture and water. Although the Nabateans were initially embedded in Aramaic culture, theories about them having Aramean roots are rejected by many modern scholars. Instead, archaeological, religious and linguistic evidence confirm that they are a northern Arabian tribe. Current evidence suggests that the Nabatean name for Petra was Rakemo, variously spelled in inscriptions as RQMW or RQM. The Jewish historian Josephus, ca. 37–100 AD, writes that the region was inhabited by the Midianites during the time of Moses, and that they were ruled by 5 kings, one of whom was Rechem. Josephus mentions that the city, called Petra by the Greeks, ranks highest in the land of the Arabs and was still called Rakim by all the Arabs of his time, after its royal founder. The Onomasticon of Eusebius also identified Rechem as Petra. In 1964, workmen clearing rubble away from the cliff at the entrance to the gorge found several funerary inscriptions in Nabatean script. One of them was to a certain Petreos who was born in Rakmu, Rechem, and buried in Garshu. An old theory held that Petra might be identified with a place called Sela in the Hebrew Bible. Encyclopaedia Britannica, 1911, states that the Semitic name of the city, if not Sela, would remain unknown. It nevertheless cautioned that Sela simply means rock in Hebrew, and thence might not be identified with a city where it occurs in the biblical text in the book of Obadiah. It is possible that the city was part of the nation of Edom. In AD 106, when Cornelius Palma was governor of Syria, the part of Arabia under the rule of Petra was absorbed into the Roman Empire as part of Arabia Petrea, and Petra became its capital. 44. The native dynasty came to an end, but the city continued to flourish under Roman rule. It was around this time that the Petra-Roman road was built. A century later, in the time of Alexander Severus, when the city was at the height of its splendor, the issue of coinage came to an end. There was no more building of sumptuous tombs, owing apparently to some sudden catastrophe, such as an invasion by the Neo-Persian power under the Sassanid Empire. Meanwhile, as Palmyra grew in importance and attracted the Arabian trade away from Petra, the latter declined. It appears, however, to have lingered on as a religious center. Another Roman road was constructed at the site. Epiphanius of Salamis, circa 315–403, writes that in his time a feast was held there on December 25 in honor of the Virgin Chabu, and her offspring Dushara. Dushara and Awuzah were two of the main deities of the city, which otherwise included many idols from other Nabatean deities such as Alat and Manat. Between 111 and 114 Trajan built the Via Traiana Nova, running from the Syrian border to the Red Sea through Petra. This road followed the old routes of Nabatean caravans. In the shadow of the Pax Romana, This route revived trade between Arabia, Syria, and Mediterranean harbors. In 125 AD, one of Emperor Hadrian's administrators left marks dubious, discuss, in Petra, pointed out by documents found at the Dead Sea. In 130 AD, Hadrian visited the former Nabatean capital, giving it the name of Hadriani Petra Metropolis, imprinted on his coins. His visit, however, did not lead to any boom in development and new buildings as it did in Jerash. The province's governor, Sextius Florentinus, erected a monumental mausoleum for his son near the end of the Al-Habda, King's Wall, tombs, which had been generally reserved during the Nabatean period for the royal family. The interest that Roman emperors showed for the city in the 3rd century suggests that Petra and its environs remained highly esteemed for a long time. An inscription to Liber Pater, a god revered by Emperor Septimius Severus, was found in the temenos of the temple known as Qasr al-Bint. And Nabatean tombs contained silver coins with the emperor's portrait, as well as pottery from his reign. Emperor Elagabalus declared Petra to be a Roman colony, when he reorganized the Roman Empire towards the end of the 3rd century. 46. The area from Petra to Wadi Mujib, the Negev, and the Sinai Peninsula were annexed into the province of Palestina Salutaris. Petra may be seen on the Madaba mosaic map from the reign of Emperor Justinian. In the 12th century, the Crusaders built fortresses such as the Ulwa'ira castle, but were forced to abandon Petra after a while. As a result, the location of Petra was lost until the 19th century. 2 further Crusader period castles are known in and around Petra. The first is Al-Wa'ira, situated just north of Wadi Musa. It can be viewed from the road to Little Petra. It is the castle which was seized by a band of Turks with the help of local Muslims and only recovered by the Crusaders after they began to destroy the olive trees of Wadi Musa. The potential loss of livelihood led the locals to negotiate surrender. The second is on the summit of El Habis, in the heart of Petra, and can be accessed from the west side of the Qasr al-Bint. The ruins of Petra were an object of curiosity during the Middle Ages and were visited by Baybars, one of the first Mamluk sultans of Egypt, towards the end of the 13th century. The first European to describe them was the Swiss traveller Johann Ludwig Burckhardt during his travels in 1812. At that time, the Greek Church of Jerusalem operated a diocese in Al-Karak named Batra, and it was the opinion among the clergy of Jerusalem that Karak was the ancient city of Petra. Burckhardt already spoke Arabic fluently and was on his way to explore the Niger River when he heard stories of a dead city that held the tomb of the prophet Aaron. He then became fascinated with finding the city. He then dressed himself up as a local and only spoke in Arabic, bringing a goat with him with the intent of sacrificing it in honor of Aaron's tomb. After one day of exploring, Léon de Laborde and Louis-Maurice Adolphe Linant de Bellefonds made the first accurate drawings of Petra in 1828. The Scottish painter David Roberts visited Petra in 1839 and returned to England with sketches and stories of the encounter with local tribes, published in the Holy Land, Syria, Idumea, Arabia, Egypt, and Nubia. Frederick Edwin Church, the leading American landscape painter of the 19th century, visited Petra in 1868, and the resulting painting El Qasn, Petra is among his most important and well-documented. Missionary Archibald Forder published photographs of Petra in the December 1909 issue of National Geographic. because the structures weakened with age. Many of the tombs became vulnerable to thieves, and many treasures were stolen. In 1929, a four-person team consisting of British archaeologists Agnes Conway and George Horsfield, Palestinian physician and folklore expert Dr. Tofik Kanan and Dr. Didolf Nielsen, a Danish scholar, excavated and surveyed Petra. The archaeologist Philip Hammond from the University of Utah visited Petra for nearly 40 years. He explained that the local folklore says it was created by the wand of Moses, when he struck the rock to bring forth water for the Israelites. Hammond believed the carved channels deep within the walls and ground were made from ceramic pipes that once fed water for the city, from rock-cut systems on the canyon rim. Numerous scrolls in Greek and dating to the Byzantine period were discovered in an excavated church near the Temple of the Winged Lions in Petra in December 1993. The Nabateans worshipped Arab gods and goddesses during the pre-Islamic era as well as a few of their deified kings. 1. Abota's eye was deified after his death. Dushara was the primary male god accompanied by his three female deities, Al-Uzza, Alat, and Manat. Many statues carved in the rock depict these gods and goddesses. New evidence indicates that broader Edomite and Nabatean theology had strong links to Earth-Sun relationships, often manifested in the orientation of prominent Petra structures to equinox and solstice sunrises and sunsets. A stele dedicated to Kozalakos is Allah or Kos the god, by Kosmilk, Melek, king, is found at Petra, Gluck 516. Kos is identifiable with Kosh, the god of the older Edomites. The stele is horned and the seal from the Edomite toilet near Petra identified with Kosh displays a star and crescent, Browning 28, both consistent with a moon deity. It is conceivable that the latter could have resulted from trade with Haran, Bartlett 194. There is continuing debate about the nature of Kos, who has been identified both with a hunting bow, hunting god, and a rainbow, although the crescent above the stele is also a bow. Nabatean inscriptions in Sinai and other places display widespread references to names including Allah, El and Alat, god and goddess, with regional references to Al-Uzza, Baal and Manutu. Alat is also found in Sinai and South Arabian language. Allah occurs particularly as Gar Malahi, God decided, Greek Gar Maelos, and Ashalahi, God's covenant. We find both Shamlahi Allah is peace and Shamalat, the peace of the goddess. We also find Amatalahi she servant of God and Halaflahi the successor of Allah. Recently, Petra has been put forward as the original Mecca by some in the revisionist school of Islamic studies, owing to claims of large numbers of independent pieces of evidence. Namely that the early original mosques faced Petra, not Jerusalem or Mecca, as the direction of Muslim prayer, the Qibla. However, others have challenged the notion of comparing modern readings of Qibla directions to early mosques. Qiblas, as they claim early Muslims could not accurately calculate the direction of the Qibla to Mecca, and so the apparent pinpointing of Petra by some early mosques may well be coincidental. Petra does receive mention in the Quran in the Surah Al-Kahf as Al-Raqam. The monastery. Petra's largest monument, dates from the 1st century BC. It was dedicated to Abotas I and is believed to be the symposium of Abotas the god. This information is inscribed on the ruins of the monastery. The name is the translation of the Arabic Adir. The Temple of the Winged Lions is a large temple complex dated to the reign of King Aretas IV, 9 BC to 40 AD. The temple is located in Petra's so-called Sacred Quarter, an area situated at the end of Petra's main colonnaded street consisting of two majestic temples, the Qasr al-Bint and, opposite, the Temple of the Winged Lions on the northern bank of Wadi Musa. Christianity found its way to Petra in the 4th century AD, nearly 500 years after the establishment of Petra as a trade center. The start of Christianity in Petra started primarily in 330 AD when the first Christian emperor of Rome took over, Constantine I, otherwise known as Constantine the Great. He began the initial spread of Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. Athanasius mentions a bishop of Petra, Antioch, 10, named Asterius. At least one of the tombs, the tomb with the urn, was used as a church. An inscription in red paint records its consecration in the time of the Most Holy Bishop Jason. After the Islamic conquest of 629 to 632, Christianity in Petra, as of most of Arabia, gave way to Islam. During the First Crusade, Petra was occupied by Baldwin I of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and formed the second fief of the barony of Al-Karak, in the lordship of Autry-Jourdain, with the title Château de la Vallée de Moise or Sella. It remained in the hands of the Franks until 1189. It is still a titular see of the Catholic Church. According to Arab tradition, Petra is the spot where Musa, Moses, struck a rock with his staff and water came forth, and where Moses' brother, Harun, Aaron, is buried, at Mount Hor, known today as Jabal Harun or Mount Aaron. The Wadi Musa or Wadi of Moses is the Arab name for the narrow valley at the head of which Petra is sited. A mountaintop shrine of Moses' sister Miriam was still shown to pilgrims at the time of Jerome in the 4th century, but its location has not been identified since. The Bidul/Bidwal, Petra Bedouin, were forcibly resettled from their cave dwellings in Petra to Sehun by the Jordanian government in 1985, prior to the UNESCO designation process. Citation needed. They were provided with block-built housing with some infrastructure including in particular a sewage and drainage system. Among the 6 communities in the Petra region, Sehun is one of the smaller communities. The village of Wadi Musa is the largest in the area, inhabited largely by the Laythna Bedouin, and is now the closest settlement to the visitor center, the main entrance via the Sikh and the archaeological site generally. Sehun gives access to the back route into the site, the Wadi Turkmeniye pedestrian route. On December 6, 1985, Petra was designated a World Heritage Site. In a popular pollade in 2007, it was also named one of the new 7 Wonders of the World. The Petra Archaeological Park became an autonomous legal entity over the management of this site in August 2007. The Biduls belong to one of the Bedouin tribes whose cultural heritage and traditional skills were proclaimed by UNESCO on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List in 2005 and inscribed in 2008. In 2011, following an 11-month project planning phase, the Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority in association with Design Workshop and JCPSRL published a strategic master plan that guides planned development of the Petra region. This is intended to guide planned development of the Petra region in an efficient, balanced and sustainable way over the next 20 years for the benefit of the local population and of Jordan in general. As part of this, a strategic plan was developed for Sehun and surrounding areas.